Sauce.
Hey, you like Pez?
It looks like that. Here's Heaney from the boundary line. He's an expert at these. From the boundary line!
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez. I'm here with Sauce, and Sauce, the AFL's got me down this week. I'm not happy at all.
Hey guys, I could definitely see that, Pez. I did notice that you were wearing your very best sweater there to try and boost your spirits. But Pez, I know you already know the answer, but just for the fans, a little bit of comical relief. Pez, what's up?
Well, a lot of listeners are going to be thinking it's because I'm demoralised after St Kilda's 75-point defeat, but it's not even that. Yes, I was demoralised after that, but the state of football at the moment, round 3, I did not enjoy it at all. Lots of floggings, and I don't know if this new rule is to blame or what's going on. The only decent game we saw, we got Brisbane-Collingwood on the Friday night, which was decently close. And the last game, which was only because of the way it was coached and the way it was played in the Geelong-Hawthorn game, which was decent as well. The other games, they just blew out to too much. The Good Friday game, North Melbourne Bulldogs, we don't want teams losing by 128 points, surely. But I don't know if I'm not happy with the new rules, but the AFL, I think they might have stuffed things up here.
Pez, I wish the podcast could pick up some visuals or at least my eye roll could have made a bigger sound than it did. But you got to be kidding me, haven't you, Pez? Looking at this week's fixture, surely you had to see that, the 128-point loss was on the cards. Surely you had to see the Essendon St Kilda loss was on the cards because you're shit, right? Surely you had to see Sydney is going to be one of the teams to beat, and they were always going to give Richmond a flogging. Please don't be like every other media outlet and all the other journalists. We don't need a knee-jerk reaction. We had 2 cracking games of football that were really close. We had some other really tightly contested games throughout different stages of the round. Pez, don't be like every other nuff.
Nah, Sauce, I'm calling you out there. I'm not like all the other ones because you know what they're saying? They actually love the high scoring. I actually don't like it. I'm actually different to what all the media is saying.
You're asking for a change, and that's what the AFL media does. Every time there's something happens, they want to change instantly, straight away.
I'm not asking for a change. I'm saying they might have stuffed up. I'm saying, of course, I know that they're not going to change anything.
Well, they do. The AFL does.
It's what the coaches. It's what the coaches need to do because Alistair Clarkson, he's gone out. He said, "We need this rule change." Yep, whatever you say goes. And then he's actually gone back to the old style, which the commentators were calling it on the weekend, and played footy with players behind the ball, slowing things down, and Geelong just played into the hands and nearly lost the game in the end. It was a tight game. People hated the first half, but they loved the finish. The other games, everyone turned it off at half-time because the blowout after blowout.
I don't think that's correct there, Pez. I think Alistair Clarkson put Geelong's game plan is so predictable, and one of the things that made him so dominant last year was that kicked around the back and waiting to the swing, and you've got to get numbers behind the ball. That is probably more of an antidote to be able to fix and be able to beat Geelong. I don't know if that's how he's going to approach every game. I would hope not, considering he brought this rule in.
He's only going to approach those games in games he can't win, which Hawthorn have a pretty poor list, so it's going to be pretty low. But we know where we stand on that. I didn't enjoy the round of football as a whole.
Didn't enjoy it.
Brisbane-Collingwood was a cracking game. I liked what Essendon were able to do and pick up their first win. Adelaide-Gold Coast on the Friday night, I really enjoyed that one as well. And even Easter Monday yesterday, it was kind of taking me back to 2020 or before that when it was tight contested footy. You had players behind the ball. You had teams trying to kick it through and try and do that. But there's just so much space in the game today where teams, if you've got good skills and you actually take the game on and you kick it into the middle, you're going to score heavily. And the media outlets, they love that the big forwards are back and kicking bags. But I don't know if it's going to be great for our game. It's watch this space.
I mean, is that what makes football really exciting? Big forwards kicking big bags. We had, a range of different players, tall forwards, small forwards, kick lots of goals. Is that what makes football exciting? I like the run through the middle that it's created. That last play where Geelong kicked the sealer. That sort of play, a quick turnover, quick chase down the field. I like that sort of aspect. I find that more exciting than the big forwards.
And I would say we used to have that a lot more, that quick turnover and chase. But at the moment, we've only got that maybe once or twice a game because teams are too careful. They're going through the middle. They're getting inside forward 50, and that's just not happening for whatever reason. But we do have to get into our round 3 recap.
And Pez, we're going to try something a little bit different today. We are on a bit of an Easter break still. We're having an extended holiday from the weekend, so we thought, you know what? let's try things a little bit different. Today we're going to be giving all of our games the due diligence through a range of our different segments, because in the last show, Pez, we didn't use any of our segments, and I was a little bit disappointed.
Just use a round recap, but we do love our little play-ons and the sound bites and things that we've got. So we are going to talk about each game within those 3 segments, and the first one is over-under.
Parker over his head.
I think Hawkins got a little under it. Out the back, Dangerfield got Kelly over the top. Runs it over goal. You've got to be kidding, because there's no doubt more of the ball over the line.
That's right, Pez. The AFL fans may not have been happy, but behind the boundary fans can be happy, because the return of one of the favourites of the segments here at Behind the Bound is over under. And for people new to the podcast, what we do is we analyse the different games from the weekend. We've got 3 games that we're going to look at through the lens of over under. We pick an imaginary line after we've gone through the game and give us a little bit of a unique talking point around the game. So, Pez, the first game we're going to be looking at is the Richmond versus Sydney game.
We like to be different, don't we?
We do
a little
like
bit
to be
different,
different.
starting from Richmond, Sydney.
That's correct, Pez, and it was a very interesting result from that one. Not many people predicted this one. Richmond Tigers getting defeated by the Sydney Swans, the young and up-and-coming baby Swans as they're being touted, by 45 points.
Oh, especially without Buddy, and Buddy being and resting him. People thought, you know what, Sydney just throwing in the towel here after being 2-0. They'll go 2-1, rest up Buddy and get him right for the rest of the season. But rested him up and didn't just beat Richmond, they flogged them 45 points. Richmond didn't know what was coming, and Richmond, a big injury. Dion Prestia went down early with a hamstring, so that's not good because he's had soft tissue injuries and things like that. But what did you think? You would have loved the Swans.
Oh, mate, you know, I said this earlier in the year that they're my League Pass side. For people who don't know, the NBA have the League Pass where they see all the smaller franchises. Sydney's not going to get a lot of airtime on the big national stage on the Friday night games. Now with the moving fixture, that might actually happen, but Sydney looked good, and they could have blown it out by more, Pairs. In the first quarter, they had absolute control over the game. They actually allowed Richmond to sort of have a bit of life. They got off to a flyer. They had 8 posters throughout the game, so hitting the post 8 times. They end up kicking 17-15, 5 of those coming in the first quarter. They dominated the stoppages. They had some amazing run forward, and they made Richmond not look like the dynasty that we have been talking about for the last couple of years.
No, we don't know if it's panic stations yet or not for Richmond, losing at the MCG where they were touted in recent seasons of that's been their, holy grail, winning there all the time. I was super impressed with the Sydney forward line with Wicks kicking 3.
Sammy Wicks.
Papley kicking 4, Heaney kicked 2, Logan McDonald kicked 2, Warner kicked 2, Hickey kicked 2, and isn't he playing well and in that conversation of best recruits for the season? But Chad Warner is probably the player that impressed me the most. He only had the 20 disposals. He kicked 2 goals, 1, but him running through the middle and I don't even know what to say. He looked like a 300 game player, and then spotting up targets, maybe going out of the pack and kicking a goal on the run from 50 out. He really impressed me, the young 19-year-old.
Yeah, he was really impressive, mate. He had 20 disposals and kicking a couple of snags, and surely that'll be 3 from 3 for the Sydney Swans, the baby Swans in the Rising Star. That'll be 3 weeks in a row, and that just shows you the depth of talent and why the AFL had to take away the academy, because they're just absolutely breeding talent down there at Sydney, or up there in Sydney if you're from Melbourne, or down there if you're from Brisbane. But the thing that watching this game is, even at halftime when they were down by so many points and they went into the half with a convincing lead, you still were waiting for Dusty Martin just to pop up and take control of the game. But
the whole game,
he had an extremely quiet game, and the thing that I think stuck out most for me is it's very easy to jump on teams when they're down, and obviously this is an un-Richmond-like performance. But it was the way that they were doing it. There was a lot of undisciplined acts. There was a lot of yelling and sort of finger pointing towards the umpires as well as some of their teammates. And they went away from their structure. What I liked is that Hardwick was on the bench trying to try some different things, moving the magnets, trying to arrange different things in that last quarter, trying to, they're not in that position very often, but very un-Richmond-like, Pez.
They showed that on the footage so much of Hardwick in the box, moving the magnets around, which you don't really see that
No, it was
that
good.
often these days. So the player that really impressed me, and teams are going to have to put a lot of work into him, is Jordan Dawson off the half-back line, and his
good.
big, booming left foot. He had 27 disposals, 21 of those were kicks, and he was just spotting up targets. He's 50, 60 metre drop punt just down the wing. And Sydney, last year, they moved the ball quite slow out of the back line where Jake Lloyd would get 35 touches a game. But they're actually, with this new rule, going a bit further, spotting up targets and then hitting that player, hitting that dangerous kick in the middle at half back, and then going forward with all that space. So Sydney looking like a dangerous team. Hopefully injuries don't do anything, but good to see our man Isaac Heaney back as well.
Yeah, Isaac Heaney, mate. Didn't he look great early with those long locks coming around, the blonde tips in the sun? Whew.
Absolute gun.
Look really, really good. But Pez, as we said, we are looking at this through a different lens. We have got our over-under, and the first one for this segment is ladder position for the Swans. They are 3-0. They've just knocked off the reigning premiers, the dynasty building Richmond Tigers. Guess for me, the over-under for them, 8th or higher. Where do you have them finishing?
8th or higher. So do they make the 8 or not? 3-0. It's pretty tough not to do it from there. But I'm going to say they'll finish out of the 8.
Out of the 8? You're going under?
Under. No go for the Sydney Swans.
They've got an unbelievably good run. They've knocked off a couple of sides they're not meant to be knocking off. I'm going the over, Pez. I'm all in on the Swans.
I knew you'd be
Baby
going
Swans,
the over.
I'm all in.
And some of my reasoning, I think, as a young side, you've got a little bit of momentum going at the moment. Can they keep it up throughout a whole season? They're going to be travelling a little bit as well. Can they win those games at home? I rated them quite low, I guess, in the mid missing finals sort of teams, but I think they'll finish a little bit higher than I had them. But I'll have them outside the 8 and you'll have them in there.
Of course, mate. And next week they'll have Essendon. They'll be 4-0 and they'll be looking right on top of the AFL ladder. Let's get into the next game. We had the Saturday night game, which was easily going to be one of the games of the rounds until the first quarter happened. And West Coast Eagles absolutely pantsed Port Adelaide. They put on 4-0 in the opening 5 minutes or so. Tim Kelly leading the charge in that midfield early. He looks trim. He looks good. And so did the Eagles at home.
Jeez, they look great, and it was good for Andrew Gaff to be back at home with his 36 disposals running up and down that wing. Their forward line is so strong. Oscar Allen, Josh Kennedy, Jack Darling, they just get the players there, and Nat Nui is dominant in the ruck. And their run and forward, it was great to see Luke Shuey back, but bad news, he did pull that hamstring in that fourth quarter. So interesting to see how long he is out for, because I think he's a very, very important piece to their team. No Yo, now no Shuey again for we don't know how long, but they just dominated Port Adelaide, and Port Adelaide didn't have that run. Aliir couldn't stop those big forwards, and I think the wide ground and the lot of space over at West Coast really helped them out.
Yeah, you spoke about West Coast forward line, but it wasn't just their forward line that was doing the hard yards. Jeremy Govan, 11 marks. Tom Barras looked amazing defence. They really kept that strong forward line that everyone is talking about piling on goals very quiet early, and they were unable to make any impact on the game. And realistically, they were going through the motions in that second half. West Coast sort of had that lead. They commanded it, and yeah, I sort of had West Coast finishing outside of the 8. But if they play football like that at SBS Stadium, then they are going to win a lot of games, Pez.
Mate, how do West Coast keep finding these guys? You've got Jeremy McGovern, obviously one of the best intercept markers. Barras, really good one-on-one defender, and he takes intercept marks. But Rotham over the last 2 weeks has really impressed me. He took 11 marks on the weekend, had 19 kicks as well. He even ventured forward and kicked it behind. But he's been defending so well for West Coast against the Bulldogs and against Port Adelaide, two teams that will be fighting for final spots.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the things that also really stood out was Nick Natanui going head-to-head with an ex-teammate, Scotty Lysett, and easily one of the best on the grounds early when the game was in the balance, the first 5 minutes realistically. But Nick Natanui looked amazing out there. Just being able to give his midfielders first option in the football makes it so much easier for them going forward. And when they do go forward, as you said, their forward line is stacked. They had multiple goal kickers. And you've got a little excitement machine on the ground as well as in the air, Flying Ryan, Pez.
Oh, he's always great to watch. He's always going to be a highlight reel there. And you mentioned Nat Nui is a part of the dominance in the West Coast Eagles midfield there, and Port Adelaide just couldn't get the job done. They decided to go pretty tall in the forward line by keeping Georgiadis in, as we spoke in our previous show last week.
Interesting decision.
And then Todd Marshall bringing him in as well, along with Dixon up there. So they had a lot of tall forwards, and you kind of have to against West Coast when they've got all those defenders, but they just set up so well and were able to dominate the game. So West Coast won. Now, the different lens that we speak about, Source, over under our favourite stadium, SBS Stadium, also known as Optus, will West Coast Eagles be beaten there?
I mean, so what, you put in the over-under as just all of their games.
0.5. Are they gonna actually lose a game there? They didn't last season. They only lost in the
they have
final.
11 games there, so you're putting the over-under as 10.5. Is that what you're putting the over-under as?
Well, are they going to win 11 or are they going to win 10 or less? Are they going to be beaten over there?
I'm going to put it under, Pairs. They do face some tough opponents there. They have, your Saints, North Melbourne. Oh, sorry, no, I was reading
Saints,
the wrong.
that's here. Come on, mate.
I was reading the wrong aspect of the fixture. But when you actually look at it, the two biggest tests for them is probably the Richmond and Western Bulldogs. They play the Saints at the end of the year, round 19. So that could be one of those tough games where the Saints might have their injury list not depleted as they are. I'm going under. I think they will get beaten over there. Maybe Richmond, maybe the Doggies, or maybe in the derby over there with Freo.
Oh, so only a few chances there. So they're going to win at least 8.
8. So you probably make the finals.
Oh, they make the finals. The West Coast Eagles. They're looking pretty good. They might have even beaten the Bulldogs if Jamie Cripps had put them up 3 goals in that fourth quarter as well. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm going to go. You've gone under. I'm going to have to go over. Let's go West Coast at home. All the way from here on in.
You've got no choice there, Pez. Always trying to be different, and just for argument's sake. Speaking of argument's sake, we get into the Sunday game, the Easter Sunday clash. A lot of people were thinking that Fremantle could make really push Carlton, and they could be possibly flirting with 0-3. But after a sort of sluggish sort of start, they've sort of been in all of their games. Carlton have a really convincing win by 45 points over the Dockers.
Yeah, they dominated. I was worried about Fife not being there. The line got out really big to -17.5, but Carlton were just able to do that really well. They had their forwards. I was really impressed with your mate Fogarty. His link-up game in the midfield and being able to kick a snag as well. Without Martin, without Fisher, Carlton just did what they had to do, get a win on the board, because they probably should have had 2 wins to start the season, and they've only got 1. So they've disappointed their fans, but Paddy Cripps, wasn't he just amazing? There's 3 votes for him. Clearances galore, went up and kicked goals. He didn't look as hurt as he has in the first 2 rounds.
No, and we could have had not just the only 10-goal game that we'd be talking about this round. Harry Mackay looked, Mackay or whatever you want to call him, looked amazing. 7 goals, 5, 12 scoring shots, probably a couple out in the full as well. He looked incredible, and is he the answer to Carlton's tall forward problems? Casbolt not being able to get into the side and be able to crack, a bag of goals, which everyone sort of was excited about him early on, but he looked really good, Pez, as the key forward for Carlton.
Yeah, he's definitely their key forward that they're going to have to stick with. Now, I think Oscar McDonald can play a role in that team, because I think Levi Casbolt, as good a mark as he is, we always keep saying that, he had the 9 touches on the weekend. He kicked the one behind. It was a bad miss as well. So, Levi, if you can't kick the goals, you've just got to go. One late inclusion, Matty Cottrell, remember him? He kicked the game sealer, I think it was against Adelaide, over there last season, the little bloke number 46. He had 14 touches. He looked pretty decent as well. Wiedering was good down back. Pittenett dominated in the ruck, and they just had all the answers. But Sam Walsh as well, he didn't kick the 2 goals like Cripps.
All-Australian.
I think he gets the 2 votes. He looks like a monster out there.
Oh, well, Mackay gets the 1. So just jump on our Brownlow show for the end of the year and put that money for VBs, Pez, because
what? The umpires will look at Mackay's 7 and they might even give him the 3 or the 2. I think
in a round of big forwards, he may get it, because that's what everyone's talking about. This could be the year we see the Brownlow change.
He gets the 3 or the 2, but I think I would give Cripps 3. You'd probably have to give Mackay, with his could have got 10, give him 2, and Walsh gets the 1. So there you go.
Yeah, Carlton.
What are we turning into? Brownlow show. We're going to give votes every game now, aren't we?
Well, hey, that's a good way to do it, Pez, because I know there's a nice 3-voter coming from a couple of people in the next segments with some of your games. One of your mates, I'm sure, is going to get the 3 votes, Pez. But if we're looking at the new lens, Pez, we've got to ask the question. Our line for this one is an interesting one. Harry Mackay kicked 4 last week against the Pies. This week he kicked 7 against the helpless Dockers. If we had to go over-under, how many games he's going to get a bag? That's 5 goals for people who aren't in tune with the football lingo. I would set the line at 4.5 for the remainder of the year. How many games? Which means if he is going to go under, he's kicking less than 4 or 4 or less. He's kicking over 5 or more.
Well, Mackay, you got to look at the bottom feeder type teams. You've got North, you've got St Kilda, you've got GWS, teams like that. I don't know off the top of my head how many times they play them, but I'm going to say he'll get it under that amount of times, because 4 more games out of 16 is 25%. If he's kicking 5 in them, that's a great return for Mackay. So he's going to be their main target. He is going to kick bags against those poor teams, especially North. If Josh Bruce is going to kick 10, he's going to kick at least 5. So I'll take the under on that one.
I'll take the over, Pez. I think that's an easy one. You know, he got 4 last week. He got 5 this week. You're looking at the sort of when they're playing at home, and some of the teams they play at home, they play GWS at home, Gold Coast at home, North Melbourne at home. There's 3 games he could possibly get that. He only needs to get that 2 more times, or 1 more time actually, because he's already got once. I'll take the over with that, Pez. I think he can get that easily.
All right, very good. So that concludes Over Under for today, Sauce, and we've been through the 3 matches. So if we haven't spoken about your team yet, it is coming up in another segment. The next segment, Sauce, is going to be Big Win, Little Win.
Big win, little win, Piz. And despite the name only giving us 2 options, we actually have 4 different options for this segment. We have a big win, big loss, little loss. And you sort of can indicate what it means. It's not referring to the scoreboard. It is referring to some of the big stories in that. And probably one of the big stories of the round, if you're a Western Bulldog supporter, is the potential premiership that everyone's talking about, because you did beat... Oh, wait, you beat North Melbourne, by an absolute bucket load. A massive win from the Western Bulldogs. A 128-point win for the Doggies, and that's what everyone's talking about.
Absolutely ridiculous scoreline here. The Bulldogs, quarter by quarter, they kicked 4 in the first, 5 in the second, 6 in the third, and a massive 10 goals in the last. Talk about giving up. Well done, Western Bulldogs. You were playing against Witches' Hats, and there was actually not 18 Witches' Hats out there. There was about 14. So you didn't have a lot to get around there. But North, so disappointing for their club. Josh Bruce, obviously the big story out of it, who kicked 10 goals. He had 10 goals too. Treloar kicked 3 from the midfield. English kicked 3. Norton kicked 2. Stevenson got his first goal for North. He kicked 2 as well. That was good. Bailey Dale also a multiple goal scorer with 2 as well. You can't really talk about dominant players in this, and it's going to be pretty easy for the players to give the umpires to give the 3 votes to Bruce, obviously, for 10. 16 of his last 24 goals have actually come against North. So, Bruce, you've got to stand up against other sides, mate.
He had a big week last week. Kicked 3 last week, so he's looking good. I think he's sitting top of the Coleman after 2 weeks.
I think he'd be sitting at the top, but I think he'd probably have more goals than he had last year as well. He had a bag of 6 last year in one of the games and only managed around 16 goals. So he's already got more than that. So for the Bulldogs' sake, hopefully he can keep going. But it's going to be hard to drop him now after kicking a bag of 10. So he's in for at least the next 5 weeks. So bad luck, Doggy supporters, moving forward. You probably should have rested him or something playing against North, knowing he could have gone off like that. But North, nothing to say. No one really stood up and showed fight and showed effort. It's just a really disappointing day for North and for footy.
It's really disappointing for North Melbourne. I mean, there were some positive signs early in that first quarter. They look like they're starting to implement a system. Noble's doing a good job there, with not really much calorie there to sort of be able to give that direction of a game plan. But they had some really good moments where a couple of handballs linked up really well, and they looked good on the out and in the open space that they were creating. But then against a side like this that have a very injected midfield that like to possess the ball, you turn it over once and you're getting scored against very quickly.
Because they just run the other way.
They just run the other way, and that was the disappointing for the North Melbourne, is that they would have some really, really great passages of play, and then a skill error, not a forced skill error, just a basic skill error, would turn the ball over. And in the second half, realistically, the Doggies were just, they were headhunting, basically. North Melbourne was a bit disappointed that the tail went between their legs, and they sort of felt sorry for themselves a bit.
What do you think of the coach's decision for North, David Noble, not to shut the game down a little bit and, stem the bleeding and just, keep it going with what they're practicing and being able to practice on that stage? Everyone's watching. It's Good Friday. So everyone sees the embarrassment. Does it harm the club more, or does it help the club because they've actually not shut the game down and continued to go?
I think it depends on what you're doing. If you are leaning into the rebuild and you are okay with the rebuild and you are okay with having 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, 5 losses against your name and, your job security, then I think it's a great thing for the club to be able to continually implement these things and continue to stick with it. They're going to have a natural instinct to be able to defend these games all the time. So they're going to have a countless amount of opportunities to shut the game down against some of those lesser sides. But against one of the top sides, why wouldn't you try and put your game plan to the test against, some of the best teams?
Well, I probably would for a couple of quarters, but then I think 80 points is probably my go. You probably can't lose more than 80 points. And even if you are getting up towards that 10-goal mark, you've just got to try and shut it down to save face for some of the fans, because you're not just embarrassed as a club, but your fans are embarrassed to say they go for North after losing by 128 points. It's one of the biggest losses we've seen. I think you do have to stem bleeding. I know you're trying to teach the young kids, but you had your big thing, and we're talking about big win, little win source. I'm going to go with North Melbourne here. It's a big loss. It's a massive loss. Not because of the margin, obviously.
Well, good work there, Pez. You really went out on a limb that one.
Well, you haven't even listened to the
Well,
to
you
bloody
just said
reasoning.
they're a big loss.
It's a big loss because they were talked up during the week. The coach came out and said, this is a game for us. We're going to, fight hard. We're going to put in effort. We're going to deserve to be on Good Friday. And the AFL now have no choice but to remove North from the game, because you can't have a game that's going to be over 100 points or even over 10-goal margin on that prime time spot on a Good Friday. You're not going to build any reputation with that.
No, you're going to get a reputation for an easy beat on Good Friday. And, pretty much there's not much you can more say to it, Pez.
If you want to keep it with North, give everyone a turn to, beat up on them on Good Friday or something like that.
Make it fair for everyone.
Yeah.
Give everyone a nice little Good Friday treat. For me, I'm going with a little win for Josh Bruce, because as you said and as you alluded to, he's got a lot of pressure coming on now. He's kicked, he's leading the Coleman after one real game. He's kicked 22 majors against the Roos in the last three games. He is touting as their answer in that forward line. We question about where they're going to score goals for. I think it actually builds a lot more pressure for him going forward. A little win for him because obviously he got the 10 snags, which is always good, but little win for him going forward because now he's got a lot of pressure to back up those performances. 2 weeks, he's kicked 14 goals. He needs to build it up. So little win for him. Not a big win like everyone is excited about. 10 snags don't come that often, but I think it adds a lot of pressure for him.
So how many goals has he got at the moment?
14, I think.
Does he get 50?
No way.
No.
No.
And I don't think
he'd be lucky to get 20.
I don't think many would have him at 50, but the Bulldog supporters have fallen in love with him again and saying, we're giving him a chance. He's settled in now. He's ready to go. But see how he goes. If he can perform and he can get 2 or 3
realistically,
goals,
he only needs
right.
that 4 more times, Pez. He only needs to play Gold Coast and beat them up. St Kilda and beat them up.
Why are you putting Gold Coast down the bottom now?
Only because they're the next team on my list that I was looking at. So, but he could do it, but I don't think so, and I don't think it's the right thing for them to be doing, putting all their chips into Josh Bruce. That's a concern if you've got a premiership ambition.
There you go. Little loss would be surprising to a lot of listeners out there, Sauce. We move on.
Little win, I had it. Little win.
What did I say?
You said little loss.
Yeah, it's Josh
If you're not
Bruce.
going to listen, mate, I'm not even going to bother.
Oh, I'm going to try. We'll try and listen in the next game. Essendon versus St Kilda.
Yeah, and I noticed that you handballed that straight over to me, Pez. Something that your Saints could have definitely used, an effective handball during the game. Essendon absolutely got the jump on the Saints, and they won this game by 75 for the second big smashing of the round.
Yeah, it was really
75 points, Pez. What are you
really,
doing?
really hard to watch. Even a loss would have been heartbreaking on this day, but they've actually just shattered it. St Kilda, after so much expectation, last 2 years they've recruited really well. They've done this. They just didn't show any effort. They didn't show any tackling pressure. They actually had the lowest amount of tackles up to half time in their history. And Essendon had over 100 possessions at one stage, and then they had more tackles, the Essendon team. So St Kilda, you're not running, you're not doing anything. Like, I don't know how at quarter time, 6 goals 4 to 3 goals 3. I don't know how it doesn't change, and you let Essendon come out in the second quarter and kick 6 goals 2 to 1 goal 2. That just doesn't happen with a decent team and a finals team. You're playing against Essendon. They've actually been depleted through injury, which we spoke about last week. Nobody in their right mind would have tipped Essendon to win, and they've come out and won by 75 points. Brad Hill's getting a big talking about now. I said we should have dropped him last week, give him a stint in the VFL. He's come back in and he's done the same thing. He doesn't get his own ball, which he needs players to get it and give it to him. But when we give it to him, he's not hitting his targets. We're giving him $900,000 a year. He's not earning that at the moment. But there was only probably 2 players that were shining lights for St Kilda. If you can have any shining lights in a 75-point loss, Source is Membry, because he's the only way we can get it forward with a contested mark on the wing, and Jack Steele in the middle. Essendon, you look everywhere around the ground, everyone was a shining light, including Nick Hine, looking great off half back.
Yeah, and Stringer looked really good in his first game back. He kicked 3 snags in the first quarter, and he looked like the package definitely was delivering there. For one of the criticisms of a lot of Essendon supporters was, well, why isn't he in there? You know, obviously there's something wrong, but if he can have that performance and that leadership and stand up in those big moments, he looked amazing in that forward line, and he could be the answer. For Essendon fans, you have to be ecstatic with, finally, the game plan that they've been trying to implement for the last 3 years came about. They were kicking the ball well. They showed a lot of effort. They were hunting the football. Their pressure in that forward line was immense. And you sort of alluded to it, well, you might have even stated it, the really poor effort for a team to have over 100 more possessions and lose the tackle count. That is crazy. But that just, I think it actually showed more to what Essendon were doing and the success of that pressure that they were applying. They were hunting everything. They were relentless. They continually were making St Kilda look second rate. And this is a team that, everyone had in their top 8, and some people even had finishing in the top 4.
Unbelievable. They're not going to be a top 4 team after their start to the season. They probably could have lost to GWS and been 0-3 after the first 3 rounds. But Essendon, a couple of the young blokes. Harry Jones really impressed me up forward from Vic Metro. He, took a couple of good grabs and was spotting up targets and things like that. But St Kilda just can't seem to do it at the moment. Jay Gresham went down with a innocuous Achilles injuries. That could be a career ender source, because Achilles injury is one of the worst ones you can actually get in footy. So that's not too good for the Saints there to have Gresham there. Jones tweaked his right ankle as well, and Redmond was subbed out with a hamstring injury for the Bombers. But the Bombers are just going to be welcoming back players, getting players there. I still don't like the Cale Hooker forward. He would have kicked multiple goals. And exactly right, but I think he's better in defence still. No Essendon supporter would have expected the win, and they would be over the moon to come out and demolish St Kilda and put them as a big talking point for the week. Where's your effort? What's happening here? After, losing to Melbourne with little to no effort and lack of skills, they've come out against a team. They must have just thought, Source, they're depleted in injuries. We don't have our ruckman, but that's all right, because, we're just going to walk through this and win. But I don't know how a team does that. And Essendon, well done, kudos. They got it.
Yeah, this is not a St Kilda supporting podcast, Pez. This is where we analyse the football. You can't say kudos to them for a good win. That's poor
I can't say that about any team.
That's poor form on your behalf, mate.
You're off your head today, Source. The start in the intro and now, off your absolute head. I can say kudos to any team for a win.
You didn't like that, Pez. Look at your backup.
I didn't like that.
You didn't like that at all.
That's ridiculous.
All right, outside of St Kilda being the biggest loser, what's your big win, little win for this?
I don't.
You better take your headphones off and storm off there.
I am about to, and didn't watch the second half with.
You didn't watch it
as much. Oh, you're not listening to the end of my sentences today, are you? I'm not struggling. Didn't watch it with as much interest as the first half, and noticing the ins and outs of tackles and things. But I guess the big win is the Bombers get a mark off the season. They get the discussion isn't around who's the worst team in the league between Essendon and North anymore. Just Northford down the bottom. So I think that's a big win for Essendon moving forward. Their supporters actually have something to go about. I got a few messages from some of my Essendon supporting mates.
Of course you did. Typical Essendon supporters.
Always. You don't hear from them, and then they just go, oh, how's the footy? What's the score? My AFL app's not working. What is it? And I just send them the score with the photo straight away. Like, I'm not going to hide from it. It's not anything to do with me, really. Yeah, I support the club. I love the club, but kudos again to Essendon. You like that one?
I did like that one. Kudos to that one. I have a big loss. You actually spoke about it. Was Jay Gresham averaging 27.5 disposals for his first 2 games. You said season ending. It could be career ending, because he is going to be going for a contract next year. It'll be interesting to see where St Kilda are at the end of the year. Obviously, they thought their premiership window was open. It'll be interesting with their first 2 sort of performance, or first 3 performances, where they finish at the end of the year. I mean, he is still young. He still is showing a lot of potential. It's a huge loss for a young footballer who's had his battle with injuries. So for me, big loser outside of the obvious one is St Kilda, but the big loser is Jay Gresham.
Yeah, and career in tatters after that. We move on to our next game and our final game of Big Win, Little Win. Adelaide Crows versus the Gold Coast Suns. Adelaide, it was a topsy-turvy game, a lot of lead changes here. Adelaide ended up winning 95-85. winning by 10 points with the big story in that last quarter is Jared Witt's going down, not having anyone in the ruck. Gold Coast started off the fourth quarter pretty good, got the lead back, but then run it out without a ruckman in there and without the big fella. So demoralising for Gold Coast with finals aspirations.
Well, we spoke about this earlier in the week, that this is one of the games that they would have penciled in for a win, and that they definitely, really would have put some work into, considering how Adelaide have sort of started the season and not being that sort of bottom feeder that we thought they were going to be. Really interesting for the way that they finished, because it was topsy-turvy. They had a couple opportunities to really seal it, and you saw that young, inexperienced Suns that we spoke about the last couple of years really come out, and that's something they've got to get out of their game. Disappointing, obviously, not having a ruck, but you can't make excuses as that's the only reason that they were not in those games, because a lot of the time they were losing the clearance, getting it back, but then their forward entries in that last quarter and some of the turnovers that they made. There was one of those kick-outs in the last quarter that they kicked it straight to an Adelaide player, and it was just like, what are you doing? Why are you making those decisions? Why are you making it harder for yourself? And I would not want to be in the Gold Coast locker rooms this week with Stuart Dew, because that was a winnable game for them, and they should have won that. They were in control. They kicked themselves out of it. Very disappointing.
In the first quarter as well, so it was 5 goals, 6 to 5 goals straight, but they were actually up by about 24, but they're up by 4 goals in that first quarter. And Adelaide came back through Big Tex, who needs to get a mention, kicked 6 goals, 3 again, absolutely dominating the competition. What has he got now? He's got 17 goals for the season. So Big Tex Walker revitalised and going great guns. King down the other end kicked 4, but they just couldn't get him the footy enough in one-on-one contests. So they've got to be able to fix that, the Gold Coast Suns. Credit to Adelaide and their effort. We've spoken about that all year. I still thought they would have lost, but you had Sloan, who's amazing, Laird, Smith, they're names that, have been around Adelaide forever. So those players need to play really good and be in their best players every single week for them to have a chance to win. And they've done it again and picked up another win. So 2-1 Adelaide Crows. No one would have picked that.
Another win and leading the Coleman. Tex Walker, 5 goals, 6 goals, 6 goals. This bloke is on fire. Did not like their performance last year. He's averaging 7 scoring shots per game, which is incredible from a team that finished down the bottom of the ladder last year and not looking to win too many games, but. They looked all right at Adelaide. They are starting to show signs of the side that we are expecting them to be. But again, you can't take away how disappointing it was for Gold Coast, because Adelaide didn't win this game. Gold Coast lost this game in inaccuracy in the first quarter, inaccuracy throughout the game, and silly mistakes in that fourth quarter that they put themselves in positions that they didn't need to be. So really disappointing for me, Pez. And that's the big loser, is the Gold Coast Suns as a whole. The big loser is this loss. This is a huge loss for the football club if they want to make finals. And I know that we're not meant to be talking about big loss, little loss in terms of the scoreboard. They are the biggest loser out of this. Not only do they lose a ruckman, which makes it really difficult considering their other couple of ruckmen are on the injury list. They've got a very winnable game next week against Carlton, and they're going to go in as the underdogs, and they're probably going to lose it, which will put them 1-3, and they'll be in the same position they've been in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and you've stolen my thunder there with the big loss, not in terms of the loss for the season, but the loss of the ruckman, Witt's doing his knee, absolutely integral part to this footy club, and they don't have anyone else to really replace him at the moment. Everyone's on the injury list for them. Sam Day going down as well does not help. So my big loss is for the Gold Coast's future without those big fellas, and their injuries are starting to take a toll, and it's going to cost them a really great season.
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do when injuries happen. Rao going down, Ruckman going down, but they've still got enough talent there, Pez. They need to find something out, and they need to get rid of those silly mistakes because, again, winnable game. I know I'm harping on. Winnable game. The injuries didn't lose in this game. It was the decision-making and the stuff that, when they're at their best, I thought was out of their game at least.
Massive game next week anyway, but we've got 3 games to go in our new revamped style show Source, and we're going to do Bring Your Own Hashtag.
Hashtag.
This is interesting. It's a main event in any stadium in the world.
Hashtag going viral.
We only can't go with it.
Hashtag bleep, bleep, bleep. That's all, folks.
And very ironic that in that intro they say one of the main events, as well as the mention of Siru Rioli, because the Geelong versus Hawthorn tradition, the rivalry, this Easter Monday clash continues to deliver, despite some of the questionable coaching decisions in terms of the game plan and really shutting it down. This absolute was a cracker. The Cats end up prevailing. Again, that Kennett's curse only is working in the regular season because we can't beat them in finals. Got up by 5 points. Pez, thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I kind of touched on this in the intro a little bit with Clarko's cluster playing a lot of players behind the ball and Chris Scott and his team. Just Geelong's not inability, but their decision not to move the ball quickly and not to spot up targets. They went backwards. They went sideways. It wasn't great for the fans to watch. But I actually love the first half battle of it, and I like watching footy like that, where the coaches are against each other. We know with the new rules, the coaches are just going to come out and try and shut things down when they can. Good on Alistair Clarkson for actually doing that. He knew, Geelong are the more talented side. How are we going to have a chance to win? We're going to do this. So Chad Wingard, he was pretty impressive. He was pretty inaccurate in front of goal as well, but it was good to see him. Luke Bruce is always good. Sean Burgoyne as well. But that turnover in the fourth quarter from Daniel Howe, he had 2 turnovers. Well, one was a boundary throw-in in Geelong's forward 50. But the other one at centre-half forward for Hawthorn, if he spots up that target, they go out and they possibly go on to win the game.
They probably do.
Jordan Clark gets a cheeky hand in there and little handball chain. He finishes Hawkins, goes back to him and finishes off with a goal. And didn't he love it, running from half-back?
Pez, I was at the game, and when he got that turnover, watching the electric sort of burst through the middle of the ground, it really brought me back to, and you're not going to like it, Pez, the toe poke from the Geelong
Don't know what you're talking about.
But that burst through the ground, and to see them actually just then link up through the hands, a couple of nice little handballs there, and to finish off with a goal, got everyone out of the seat at the G, and it was a fantastic way to finish to what was really a great game outside of that sort of slower sort of style. Pez, I was the exact same. That first half, I actually really enjoyed that sort of first half. Hawthorn making Geelong work harder, and I guess hopefully what it does is it brings around this game plan by Chris Scott, and we continually do it, and
not going to work in finals.
It's not going to work in finals. We got lucky last year, but one of the things that has been really impressive over the last 2 rounds, Irishman Mark O'Connor got another scalp.
The tag is back.
Held Tommy Mitchell to 24 disposals.
You were at the ground source, and I was messaging you going, "Oh, what's Mitchell? How many is he going to get today?" It all depended on O'Connor if he went to him, and the tag is back.
Not since Cameron Ling has Geelong seen they tried with Guthrie for a little bit, but I'm so glad.
Is that Guthrie?
No, they tried with Cameron Guthrie. I'm so glad that they shook that tag. Excuse the pun, but he looked really good, and he's been a real injection into that midfield, and something that Geelong has done really well in the defensive half of the ground and not in the midfield is actually defend, and that's what was really allowed Geelong to come away with a lot of clearances, that they were able to stop ball magnet Tom Mitchell from getting those 1-2s, those meaningless handballs that he gets, but they do become more meaningful when he connects with some of those other players. As you said, O'Meara and Shields being those big impact players. But the big story from the game has to be my man, Cameron Guthrie, Pez.
Cameron Guthrie, what did he have? 43 disposals. He looked
11 clearances.
11 clearances, absolutely elite. But they just needed the ball to get in that forward line a little bit more. I think Jeremy Cameron's going to help that side out a lot when he actually eventually comes back in, because he's going to go up the wing and get the ball out there. And you're also missing Meningola and Dangerfield.
There's a lot of names there for Geelong to be 2-0 or 2-1, and realistically could be 0-3. They're doing all right with a very depleted list.
Yeah, everything. Their backline is standing up. Tommy Stewart and Blitzarves even going forward a little bit yesterday, which was strange. But this was one of the games I really enjoyed on the weekend. Hawthorn couldn't get the job done in the end, and Hawkins was inaccurate with some of those snaps. He could have put the game away, but he kicked that point, hit the post, and I'm like, oh no, 5 points down. Are Hawthorn going to be able to go straight down the other end and go from here? But didn't happen in the end. I don't know if AFL fans, the casual, are going to be too happy with that game. I saw a lot of things on Twitter which wasn't, but as an AFL fan for many, many years, I really did enjoy the battle of the coaches, which Alistair Clarkson won, even though they didn't win the game.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, if we were doing big win, little win, which we're not, it's a big win for the rest of the coaches. But we are doing Bring Your Own hashtag, Pez. And what I wanted to talk about is my hashtag is Smith gets the chockies. And I'm talking about Isaac Smith here. And one of the things that I don't like seeing is when you've got a champion of the club, a premiership player, being booed for leaving the club on different terms, whatever the reasons are for leaving. Yep. I didn't think his exit was in a negative fashion, but really disappointing for Hawthorn fans. To boo the first time, yeah, cool, that's fine. But to continually boo the whole game, I think is just really un-Australian in terms of football. And realistically, it's different if you're doing it against someone who's not a big name in your club, but you've got a premiership player here. He's part of your dynasty.
So Joe Danaher, you're okay if he gets booed from the Essendon fans?
No, not really, because, again, maybe, I am probably okay with him getting booed. But again, not the whole game. I don't think there's a need for it for the whole game. Boo ridiculously in that first quarter when they get a couple of touches. I just don't think that the game needs it.
All right, I was just trying to understand where you're coming from, because I was thinking about this yesterday. Every time Isaac Smith got the ball, the boos are coming, and I'm like, did he really choose to leave? Like, he did in the end. He wanted to change the scenery with his family and stuff. But look at what he's given you since you got drafted. There's a triple premiership player there. You've got
210 games he played and 165 goals. He gave 9 years at the club. You couldn't ask for much more from him.
Yep.
He's been a loyal servant. He would have got the tap on the shoulder for the rebuild. And he said, hey,
what would you expect to see? Nothing? Or first time he gets the pill? Bit of a cheer from the Hawthorn fans for what he did.
No, the traditional boo, yeah, cool. Boo the first time he gets it, get it out of the system, and then you know what? Just let it go. Just support your team. Don't worry about your opposition team. Just support your team. I just don't like it.
It's not the strangest boo we've had this season, because Treloar against Collingwood
that was a horrible
booed at the start, where it wasn't even his choice, and he probably still wants to be at the club if he could be.
But they finished the game cheering for him. They finished the game cheering for him.
So Collingwood supporters a bit higher on the scale than the Hawthorn fans.
Oh, not in general. Well, I think so. If you're comparing those two, you are comparing oranges to apples, but I just don't like it. I just don't think that, it's different when a person leaves the club and they leave the club in disarray, or they jump off, or they throw someone under the bus. But in this circumstance, he gave you 9 years, 3 premierships. How can you boo him? He's a champion.
I really like that hashtag and the discussion that form source. Mine's very simple. It's hashtag Clarko's cluster. I just want him, can he bring it back, and can he make games not as high scoring as the AFL wants, and try and keep Hawthorn in some games with a poor list this season?
How ironic is that? He's the one that brought in the rule, and he's the one that actually solves it. Maybe that's why he brought it in, because he already knew how to game plan it. He was all done. Ahead of his time, Alistair Clarkson. Go over to the Giants, mate. That's where we need you. We need you seen there with a better list, because Hawthorn's list isn't great. There are a couple of young players there coming through. CJ through that middle, and I'm going to refer to him as CJ because I heard a Hawthorn supporter saying it yesterday, because I struggle with his name. Absolutely electric. He's going to be an absolute find for the Hawthorn football club.
He took a couple of great grabs, and he loves the footy as well, because
some pace.
He's disappointed if it's turned over and it's in his vicinity, and he runs hard the other way as well. All right, we move on to a game that was in the middle of, it was Sunday night. There was only 2 games on the Sunday. Mm-hmm. We got GWS taking on Melbourne. GWS started 16 points up at quarter time. Couldn't hold on in the end. They had 3 injuries to big players, which we'll speak about. Source. They lost by 34 points. Melbourne 102, Giants 68.
Yeah, really disappointing for the Giants, because I think that if they had a full list for that full game, they probably wouldn't have got blown out like they did. The moment that second injury went down, they were in trouble, because they were already starting to slow down. They could have kept it competitive for the rest of the game, but the moment they had a lower, players on the bench, they were done and dusted. And Melbourne, big Giant killers here, because that's 3-0 for Melbourne Football Club. They've got a big game against Melbourne next week. They're looking all right.
Melbourne against Melbourne?
Melbourne against Geelong, sorry.
Big game. Massive game against Geelong coming up, but the injury's not good. First, Davis went down with an ankle. The medical sub came up in Shipley. Then Canelio went down with an ankle, and then De Boer did his hamstring. So they were actually down 2 rotations on the bench, which doesn't really help with that medical sub rule, does it? It brought back the factor of luck and injuries. Is there even a need for the medical sub? Things like that. But, we're not going to be able to change the AFL's mind. So you got to keep moving forward. After that third injury was done, you knew Melbourne were going to run over the top of them. GWS started the fourth quarter strong. Toby Green, 2 goals straight away. If he was in a decent team, or you go back a few years ago, 5 goals 2 he had, and the opportunity was quite bare.
I mean, they kicked 5-1 in the first quarter, and he had, I think, links in 4 of those goals. He looked incredible, and this is what we were talking about last week with GWS, is that we needed a player to stand up, and he is doing his absolute everything to try and will this team along, and it was just will, Pez, because He's a superstar of the game, and the effort he is showing is something that the rest of the GWS Giants should look at, and they should just show his highlights for the whole week and show, hey, this guy bleeds your football club. Show some effort. If someone here shows some effort.
If you're a casual fan and you only watch a few games around, if you do end up watching a Giants game, watch Toby Green really closely, because when that ball comes into the forward line, he protects the drop of the ball. He's so clever with it. And he takes so many... I've never seen a bloke take so many chest marks inside the forward 50.
Especially for a little bloke.
Contested.
Especially for a little bloke his size.
Contested chest marks. Unbelievable. Protects the ball drop and dives from there. But the other guy that really excites me, he didn't really excite me in round 2 because it was against my Saints. But Cozzy Pickett kicked 4 goals, 1. This guy is a speed machine. He snaps around the corner, and just his ability to know where to be inside that forward 50. Melbourne have really found one there. I was messaging my brothers who are all St Kilda supporters, and I was saying, why can't we find a guy like this to come into our forward line?
But his natural talent, Pez, because it still looks very raw, untapped talent, but his smarts around the football, knowing when to swing around the body, knowing when to go baseline. No, there's one where he was running the ball out of bounds and he just made an unbelievably great decision, gave the handball to Neil Bullen, put on a nice little shepherd. Neil Bullen pulls one from, Neil Bullen's backside. But realistically...
That was a nice goal.
It was a great goal, but... He's an absolute find for Melbourne, and we probably haven't really given the credit to Melbourne in this game because they did take control of it from the moment those injuries went down, and their skill level is looking better, Pez. They had some really great forward entries. Max Gawn looks like a good sort of target down there. They still don't know who's going to be their tall target there. They sort of float him back defence. They played him in forward. I mean, if that's the answer for them, good luck to them, but 3-0, this is the Melbourne side that we have been asking for, all the AFL has been asking for the last 5 years.
Yeah, they've got options there, and if you can bring the ball to ground and have Cozzy Pickett at your feet, you're going to be doing it. I was really impressed with Fritsch as well as a forward. He's got the smarts around goals as well, and knows where to be with inside that forward 50. But I do love the main man for Melbourne, Christian Petrarca. As soon as he gets that pill, he explodes. I think he's so fast. One of the highest acceleration surely in the league.
Little meatball.
He just goes. He's a couple of don't argues on the weekend as well. And he just runs and looks goals. He goes, yep, I'm going goals here. And he's going to slot him from 50. He's going to get a lot of Brownlow votes this year if they can keep that up and keep that skill up. Ed Langdon on the wing as well, hitting a lot of targets. And that's what Melbourne need, because that's what they haven't been doing the past few seasons.
If they get the wins, Pez, early favourite for the Brownlow?
Well, if they get the wins, who else is going to get the 3 votes? You've got Max Gawn probably competing with him.
Ruckman don't get him.
And Ruckman don't get it.
They don't have a tall forward, which way the game's going. So
went forward and kicked 2 on the weekend, so I think Max Gawn will be in the votes. But Petrarca, I would give him the 3 votes because he's just a machine. He's so strong, and that acceleration is just next level. So, Giants, 0-3. Did not want that to start, and injuries galore. Leon Cameron, it's time. Said it last week. I'll be saying it every week, I think.
Yeah, and that's where my hashtag is, Pez. It's giant wait for Leon, because it's hashtag giant wait, because football, a long week, there's a long time in football for 1 week, but I called this at the start of the season, Pez. Judgment Day is going to be next week against Collingwood. The Collingwood are 1-2. GWS are 0-3. It could be the big game for them next week, because if they lose, they go 0-4 with this list, and everyone is still touting them as a talented list.
That's it. That's definitely they go.
I don't need to say any more.
They can't make finals from here. 0-3. There's probably no way for mine.
Well, the last team to start 0-3 and make a premiership was that Sydney Swans team a couple of years ago, where they went 0-3.
They went 0-6, I think.
Well, yeah. Well, they were the last Sydney team, so still.
Yeah, 0-6, crazy. You remember Thomas Bugg?
Yeah, I remember Thomas Bugg.
He played for both clubs. Played for the Giants. Played for Melbourne.
Oh, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks for
it relates to my hashtag.
Sorry, Fizz. I can see where you were going. I can see where you were going.
You would
with
love this one. Fan Bug. Fan Bug is my hashtag with the 2 G's for a tribute to Bug and his stellar career at GWS in Melbourne. But the Bug is going to be going through the Giants fan base, and they're not going to have any support moving forward, because 0-3. They're not getting spectators to their ground. They're going to be, back in the day when they first started, 6,000, 5,000, 4,000. It's just going to get less and less, and they're going to have no fans left, and they've got to be winning if they're going to get any fans like Sydney were back in the day.
This is how disappointing GWS's performance has been. We're talking about Tom Bugg. That's how disappointing their performance is. We're not talking about the superstars there.
I was thinking, how can I get a fan? I wanted to talk about the fans. How can I get
Tom
it
Bugg's a
into
fan,
there?
is he? Tom
No,
Bugg's a fan?
There's a bug. There's a bug going through. They're all sick.
Yeah, puns aren't good when you have to explain them, Pez.
Well, I don't have to explain it to the listeners, obviously, but for some reason today you are off, and I have to explain it to you.
I just said it was a good reference that just shows you how poor they're playing, to put it into perspective of how bad their season is slowly derailing.
Well, that's the thing, and we've got only one game to speak about. It was actually the first game of the round source, and probably one of the best. We started with Richmond Sydney because it was such a big talking point. We're going to finish with Brisbane versus Collingwood, one of the biggest games, a kick after the siren to win the game by 1 point, the barest of margins. It was a kick and celebrate straight away.
Yeah, a little bit of redemption time for Bailey there, Zach Bailey, to be able to kick the winning goal after just 1 week. Exactly, well, it was actually a little bit less. It was 6 days earlier.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
That he should have been given an opportunity to win the game for Brisbane against Geelong, but we all know how that panned out. But what a game this was, Pez. That last quarter had so much intensity. It went back and forth, and it really was just an arm wrestle of skill. There was pressure. Both teams, this win meant so much to them, and you could see that by the way they were playing.
Exactly right. I think Brisbane played super poor during the first 3 quarters. Their skill level was not up to standard, and they were just turning the ball over. Collingwood were able to take advantage of that really well, even without Elliott in the team, and were able to get quite a big lead. They were leading heading into the dying stages of that game at the end there. But Collingwood, when you're up, you know what they tried to do? A couple of minutes left, they actually kicked the ball backwards for one of the first times in the game. And that's kind of when you went, oh, Brisbane actually have a chance here, because you don't actually want to go forward and score. You just want to not have them score. And that usually doesn't work out well.
This has to be on the tip of every single AFL supporters' fans when they're at the ground. The moment you go into protection mode and trying to protect a win, and you go away from what got you in front to begin with, you put yourself at risk just opening yourself up, because Brisbane continually did what they were doing, applying the pressure. They were in this game all the way through, Pez, and realistically, if you adjust your game plan that was working, it's crazy to me, and so many teams do it. And Geelong did it last week against Brisbane. They put the cue in the rack at half-time and started doing it. They did it again against Hawthorn on the weekend. It's so frustrating to see as a supporter. Stick to what is working. Yes, you don't have to be as erratic going forward, but don't go backwards. Don't put the rest of your structures that you work all week on.
Especially if you haven't done it all game.
Oh, exactly. It's stupid. It really drives me nuts. And you expect better things from some of the leaders at the club. Scott Pendlebury played an amazing game. He had 30 touches, but he was one of those people that was doing it as well.
It must have been a directive from the coaching box, because why else would they do it? Or were they just too gassed and didn't have the energy to be able to do it? What you've got to do there, he was on the wing and he kicked back to half back, and then they turned it over. He had to kick down inside their forward 50 there against the boundary line, hit the ball out, and then go again. You've got Brody Grundy in the ruck, who was playing against a young fella there and absolutely dominated in the hit-outs and the hit-outs to advantage. He had a ridiculous number, but 54. They lost the clearances. They lost the clearances. So how can you lose the clearances if you've got 54 hit-outs? So 7 or something like that.
It's it's good for him for his massive contract. I mean, Eddie Maguire with that big signing is probably sitting there going, oh, it was good that he got his hand on the ball a lot, but is that going to save him? Because he's still being talked about, I think, because as you said, hit outs to advantage. You need to be winning that stat if you're getting 54 good looks at them, compared to the next hit out winner was Mason Cox with 9. The 2 ruckmen for Brisbane had 3 and 1.
Wow.
So it was 54 to 4, and you still lost the contested clearances. Like that's terrible.
It's not great for the Collingwood midfield, and they need to fix that up. Does Brody Grundy need to hit the ball in different places? Are they on the same page? What's happening there? He still played a great game with some marks and 28 disposals, but I just think them not to dominate those clearances and win by at least 5, is that much of an ask if you have plus 50 in the hit-outs?
Think about it. You're getting it 50 more times. 50 more times you've got first look. You need to be dominating the clearances.
Yeah, and if they won the clearances, they would have won the game.
Easily.
And you go from there. So do teams plan for Collingwood like this? Yes, all right. Brody Grundy can dominate in the ruck. He can get all these hit-outs if he wants, but we're just going to win the clearances in the middle anyway.
We saw it a couple of years ago with when Gary Ablett was playing at Gold Coast. They say we're going to let him have 40 touches, but we're going to stop everyone else. And I think that's what's happening here is that we'll let you have first look at the football. That's fine, but we are going to stop everything else. We're going to shut it down because if you stop Pendlebury, stop Sidebottom, Taylor Adams, he had a great game, but if you stop those three, the ball's not getting out of there. And when they do go forward, they haven't got much of a forward line anyway. Dacos was good. He kicked 2. Myercheck, Old
Kicked some
Faithful.
great goals, Dacos.
He always kicks 2 goals. But realistically, they're in trouble, I think, Collingwood. They really are in trouble.
Oh, yeah, they definitely could be. But to go back to Brodie Grundy and those hitouts, I'm thinking Stephen Martin during the game. I'm like, oh, this is a big loss for Brisbane because they don't have anyone. But they didn't need anyone in the end because they still won the clearances and ended up winning the game. So bad luck there, Collingwood. You need to go back to the drawing board and do something there. What do you got for a hashtag?
I've got Joe Danaher is my hashtag because he had a lot of the ball. He had 18 disposals, 8 marks. He needs to be solving Brisbane's goal-kicking woes. He kicked 3 3-pairs. So 3 goals is great, but you got 6 opportunities. You need to come away with more than 50%. He had 8 marks. He had 18 disposals, as I said. He had 1 goal assist, which is fantastic, but realistically, that is going to hurt them. He is there to kick goals. He frees up some of their other forwards. He makes Charlie Cameron, the second forward there. He's got to be dominating. He should be the one we're talking about with a big bag of 5 this week, not Josh Bruce.
I'm glad you brought him up because watching him, there's a couple of all-about-me moments for Mr. Joe Danaher where he could have done the simple thing and laid the ball off easy handball, but he's tried to take the player on and lost the ball a few times in that fourth quarter. So if they lost here, the big story for mine would have been Joe Danaher cost Brisbane the game.
You probably would have used the hashtag Joe Danaher.
Joe Dirt.
Oh,
probably.
Joe Dirt.
Yeah.
With that mo, he looks a bit like Joe Dirt.
I would have gone Joe Dirt. But I've gone a bit of a play on, probably a bit of a rude word that we probably can't say on the podcast, but instead of the F word, I've gone rucket. So hashtag rucket. And that's what the Collingwood players are going to need to be able to say. Rucket, we're just going to go in and get the footy off Brodie Grundy's hands because he's dominating for us and we're not winning it out.
I like that. I'm glad that we censored it for the grade 3 words, for grade 3 viewers, and we used the F word. We used a naughty word there, Pez. Jesus Christ, mate.
Well, you want me just to say it?
No, I don't want to lose our clean rating.
Yep.
I definitely don't want to lose it. Well, that was our round recap, Pez. And normally that's where our show would finish, but Pez, we've got a little surprise today.
It was a toss of the coin. That 5 wins the toss.
Yes, it's been an unusual year for joint tosses.
Drives it beautifully. Ranked! Big time again!
Well, this is going to be one of the new fan favourites, Pez. We thought we
Coin
would
toss.
include a new segment. This is the coin toss where we give our viewers, we give Pez, we give Sauce 2 options. Just like a coin, you can either pick heads or tails. There's only one right answer, and that is up to the person that we are asking. The first coin toss moment, Pez, Guthrie or Bruce, who had the better performance?
Guthrie or Bruce, I'm going to go with who they were playing and the importance of the game. One was a 128-point win, one was a 5-point win. Guthrie for mine because Bruce's 10 doesn't mean much to me.
Yeah, I think Guthrie, mate, had a big stage to perform on. In the end, Bruce was getting the ball absolutely given to him, trying to get that 10, and he took a while. Took the fourth quarter to get it. So for me, Guthrie is the coin toss winner.
It's easy to kick 10 in a training drill. The next one, I'll toss the coin up in the air. We've got the biggest loser of the round, Richmond Tigers or Port Adelaide Power.
For me, it's the Port Adelaide Power. They were expected to challenge. They weren't really responsive in that win against, the loss against the Eagles. Next week, they play Richmond. Richmond do this all the time. They throw up a loss here and there.
Yeah, and that's my point exactly. I'll agree with you, Port Adelaide, because they could have lost. They just needed to be competitive, and they weren't. But Richmond, they do this every year, and it looks like in round 3 where they get smashed by a team that they're meant to. Hawthorn did it to them either last year or a couple of years ago where they beat them by a 30-40 odd as well, and Richmond went on to win the premiership. So no alarm bells for Richmond, but Port Adelaide need to tighten up against those top sides.
Next one on the cards, Pez, or on the in the wallet is who would you rather be right now at this point of the season, Sydney or Melbourne?
Oh, yeah, kind of a tough one. I'm gonna have to go with Sydney here with the young fellas. They are impressive. I think they're going to burn out a little bit, but Melbourne haven't impressed in the last few seasons, and I think they're going to probably finish below Sydney. If they were playing each other next week, I'd be tipping Sydney, so I'm going Sydney.
Yeah, I'm going with that, Pez, for the same sort of reason. I'm going with Sydney because Melbourne have started 0-3. They need to make finals. Otherwise, they're going to be talked about all off-season, and they're going to be really, really building the pressure if they can't continue this winning streak.
Well, that's it. I've got the coin here in the wallet source. It's the last one. Geelong game plan versus GWS's game plan.
Shit. Yeah. I mean, I guess you've got to go with Geelong's game plan because they are getting the wins, but it's by the narrowest of margins, Pez, because it is not a great brand of footy, and Scott continues to persist with it. If they had less talent, we would not be talking about this as a game plan because it'd be like North Melbourne. It'd be all over the place.
Yeah, I don't even know if GWS have a game plan. This is the problem. So I might have to go Geelong just because they do have a game plan. I don't love it, but I think they've actually got one. So Leon Cameron, see you later. GWS get an actual game plan in there with that talent, get some injuries back and win a few games and start 2022 in a better fashion. Geelong, Chris Scott, you got to change up, mate.
So that's the end of Coin Toss. We're going to try to do that every week where we go through, just give some coin tosses, obviously, some head-to-head options, quick fire, short, sharp responses. If you've got some that you want to play with us or you want to send across to us to make sure that we can toss the coin to, where can they get us, Pez?
At Behind the Bound, all socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our podcasts on wherever you listen to podcasts and leave that cheeky 5-star review.
Yeah, big week for us, Pez. We cracked the top 150 on Chartable podcast in the category of Australian AFL. So a very niche sort of market. Cracked the 150.
How many podcasts are there? 150?
151, mate.
Yeah.
No,
yes, we're not on the bottom.
But that's how we can keep climbing and we can keep getting this quality content out to you. Make sure you send all the link to all your friends. Make sure you get them all on board. Pez, round us off.
Well, that's it. I've been Pez. Still not happy with the AFL. Peace out.
I'm still Sauce. We'll catch up next time, guys.